So welcome and thank you, youth leaders, for all of your hard work throughout this program. We started in March, and you have been receiving training on the basics of congressional appropriations and education funding. You have received training on in-district advocacy. You've learned about the work that Global Campaign for Education US does, and you've also learned how to take the skills that you already have and implement them into your careers in the future. You've truly done marvelous work, and we thank you so much for what you've done. You are making a difference. It is truly invaluable to have youth voices when we are discussing policy that largely affects youth. So never forget that you are making a huge difference. Today we're going to be discussing your youth advocacy work plan. So it's important to understand how to take all the wonderful skills that you've acquired from this program and implement them in your communities, whether you will be advocating in your district or whether you'll be traveling to Capitol Hill, as some of you will be June 18th through June 20th when we have our Advocacy Summit. For those of you who aren't attending the Advocacy Summit, you still have all the basic tools that you need to continue to advocate for global education. And these are also skills that will translate into other fields of advocacy. We want you to know that you are empowered and you can do your part to ensure equity, especially educational equity. So you are making a difference. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the Youth Advocacy Work Plan. So the agenda for today is just to welcome you all, and we already expressed how grateful we are that you are members of the GCE US cohort. In a few weeks you will become GCE US alumni, and from that point on we're going to be calling on you to help us continue to incorporate youth voices into the GCE US movement. We'll discuss our work plan. We'll discuss future check-ins, both individual and group, and then we'll discuss advocacy internship jobs and resources, and then we'll discuss feedback. And we'll have some reminders. So let's go over the work plan. The work plan is available on the GCE US website. It's on the youth training page. And here's an overview of what the work plan entails. So here we have the change we want, and here is where you incorporate your objective. So our objective is to expand access to education around the world. And then we have a section. What would it take to make this happen? How will we get that change to occur? So 3 examples of how we might get this change to occur is to have an educated and inspired constituency. In other words, you just want to motivate people and make them aware of the importance of global education. And you might do this by using some of the strategies that we've discussed throughout the program. And the next thing you want to do is have an engaged media. So we want to work with the media, both your blog post, your editors at newspapers, your local campus papers, and social media to inspire people and get them aware of the issues. And then we want to meet our monetary appropriations targets. Now the appropriations targets can change from year to year, but GCUS does have a fact sheet that we can email to you with our current appropriations ask, and you can also view the monetary appropriations targets on the GCEUS website if you go to our action link, which I can also send to you. But oftentimes, to meet monetary appropriations targets, you're going to have to advocate through your members of Congress. That might mean going to a meeting and preparing an agenda and an ask and bringing a fact sheet, or it might mean writing a letter and mailing it or even tweeting it to your members of Congress. Those are all things that you can do to advocate when we're talking about monetary appropriations targets. So let's get more specific as to how we're going to do what we're going to do. So how are we going to develop an educated and inspired constituency? How we're going to do that is by using some of the strategies you've learned. So for example, you might develop an educated and inspired constituency by having a movie day. You might go on campus and show a screening of the film Girl Rising, or show a film about Malala, the young woman who was shot by the Taliban for advocating for girls' education. Or you might just show a video about different educational experiences that children around the world have. Then you might follow that up with a petition. And this is just a way, as we discussed throughout the training program, to get people aware of the issues and to inspire them through their emotions. Or you might host a call-in day. There's lots of strategies that we've used throughout the semester which you can use to inspire people. So you can do that. And then an engaged media. How do we have an engaged media? Some of the strategies that we've discussed throughout the year include writing op-eds, letters to the editor. You could write a blog post. You could write a letter to the editor for your local campus paper. You could build relationships with editors at blogs or newspapers. Anything that you can do to make the media aware of the importance of global education and the issues that are affecting children and youth around the world as it pertains to education. And then meeting monetary appropriations targets. We've already discussed this, but it could be writing a letter to your member of Congress with a specific monetary ask. It could be completing the petition, or it could be sending a letter through the Global Campaign for Education US website, which already has monetary appropriations targets. It could be that simple. You could share a link to the GCUS letter that we have on our website, which I can link to with your peers. And these are ways to connect with Congress. You already have monetary ask, and it's a good way to help make Congress aware that their constituents know the importance of global education and that they know how it's important. They know why it's so important to fund global education. And GCUS has so many resources on our website that are available to you, which I can include as well. Another important aspect to discuss when we're talking about developing your work plan is managing risk. So oftentimes when you're developing your advocacy work plan, you're going to come across opportunities and you're also going to come across barriers. There'll be a lot of positive things that come out of your advocacy, but there might be some risk and there might be some challenges. And it's important to acknowledge that. So when you are building your work plan, you always need to look at some of the possible risk that could result. So what are some examples of risk? Well, people could lose motivation. That's a big one. If people do not feel connected to the issue, or if they feel like they're overwhelmed and they just can't make a difference, then they could lose their motivation. That's a big issue. So as an advocate, you have to understand how to motivate people. And part of that comes from just building relationships with the community, and part of that comes from just using the emotions that people have to make them understand why this work is so important. And we already talked about how you can do that a lot of the time through film and art. You can do this through making speeches, town hall meetings, just drawing attention. You can do this. A big aspect of this is sharing stories. You can share your personal education story with people, and you can inspire other people around the world to share their education stories. You can do a photo petition. And these are all ways to motivate people and inspire them so that they don't feel overwhelmed or burned out. So that's important. Another risk is lack of insider's perspective on politics. So a lot of the times as an advocate, you might come across a barrier where you feel like you don't know or you don't have the insider perspective that's needed to do this work. But you can do the work. As a constituent, this is an issue that affects all of us. And you have a whole coalition of people who can be used as a resource. So you've got resources at your disposal. You can gain information and knowledge, and you can do your own research to stay up to date on the issues. So you don't have to be necessarily on Capitol Hill every single day to understand an issue. You know right from wrong, you have your basic advocacy skills, and you'll bring the facts with you. And that's a critical component of advocacy, is just knowing that you don't have to be an expert. Just make sure that your facts are correct, do your research, and know when to reach out and ask for help. You have coalition members who do this for a living. They have knowledge that they can share, and those are resources. Another risk can be adults not taking youth seriously. So although you all are technically adults, you're all over 18, when you're a younger person, sometimes people who have been doing this work for many years feel like they have more knowledge than you, and sometimes they do have more knowledge, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't take your voice seriously. And it doesn't mean that your perspective is invalid. So you need to convey that as a younger person, you are affected by policy. You understand why the issue is important and that you are to be taken seriously. And one way to do that is by doing your research, by sharing your stories and how you're connected to this, and just by ensuring that you are taking yourself seriously. If you take yourself seriously and understand the power of your voice, then other people will have to take you seriously as well. Another component of your work plan is monitoring success. So you want to keep track of how the advocacy strategies that you are using are impacting your community. You want to look at the number of community supporters that you have gained. Maybe look at the number of co-sponsors on a bill. And you want to know about the number of media hits. How many op-eds have you submitted that have been published? How many people have retweeted your social media tweet in support of a global education policy or initiative? Looking at this information can help you know how to fine-tune your strategy in the future. And it can also be a way to learn what you're doing that's been successful. And it can also be a good thing, because if you go to meet with a member of Congress, you can share the impact that your work has had, and you can share the number of people in your community who are concerned about this issue with them. You can share the number of people who have retweeted a global education tweet that you have shared on your social media, or a post that you have shared on social media. So this is all important. So this is what your work plan will look like. Once you put in all these components, and GCEUS staff is happy to assist you, you can email it to me, preferably by June 30th, 2018 this year. So by the end of the month, if you can email it to me, I can help you if you need it to be reviewed, or we can just work on it throughout the summer. And after you do your work plan, you're really going to work on implementing the strategies. We want you to also be empowered to know that this isn't just something that you're doing for homework. It's something that's going to actually be feasible and you're going to use in your community. So make sure that you're putting in strategies that are feasible for you, that are appropriate given your resources. And if you need more resources or help, then you need to note that in your work plan, and note that I may need to get rights to show this video on campus. If you want to, for example, if you want to access the Girl Rising film and you need a public screening, then you need to get the rights for that. So if there's anything that you might need, resources, you need to note that on your work plan as well. But just make sure it's feasible, make sure it's step by step, and you should be able to implement it. GCEUS staff is here to support you as needed. So that's the work plan in a nutshell. In terms of check-ins, you may schedule individual check-ins at your convenience. The purpose of the check-ins are to provide an extra layer of support to youth leaders. So if you want to check in regularly on Wednesdays at 6 p.m., that's fine. And we can also have monthly group check-ins where we discuss the successes that we've been having with our work plans, maybe some of the challenges, and just a way for you to connect. So that is a resource that's also available to you. And then another resource, which is available on our website, are the advocacy, internship, employment resources. So it's important to know that all these skills that you're doing are highly transferable to other fields, whether you stay in the international education sector or not. These are all strategies that can translate into a variety of fields. So we do have some career and professional development resources which are readily available on the website, and we encourage you to look at them. We want you as youth leaders to feel like this is a viable career. If you want to build a career, these are skills that you can use, and view us as a resource. So these are all the resources, and they're also available on campaignforeducationusa.org. And then you go to additional resources. They're all there, and I will send the link as well. So that is our job resources and internship resources. Next, we are going to be sharing a survey. We want to get feedback from our youth leaders about how we can enhance the youth advocacy program and the training in the future. So just be on the lookout for that. In the future, you might think of ways that we can make the program more accessible to a variety of people. So, for example, you might think of how we can implement maybe a scholarship program. We also want to know what kind of support you might need to implement your work plan in your community. We might want to know what future webinar topics interest you. We want to know how can we improve Global Action Week for Education in the future. How can we improve the length of webinars and workshops? How can we make the Advocacy Summit more accessible to everyone? We have a great turnout this year. We're expecting a good, strong amount of dedicated youth leaders, but you're all very dedicated, and we want you all to have the opportunity to attend. We want to know about what types of content and topics would be most helpful to learn about in the webinars. And we want to know any other ideas or suggestions that you have for improving the youth advocacy training program. Specifically, how might we make it sustainable? Does that mean having youth voices included throughout the year? We want youth voices to be included throughout the year, not just during the training program. But how can we do that is the question. So these are all things that we'd like to know about, and we will send out a survey. But just please think about giving us some feedback that we can implement in future years, and these are some of the questions that we'd like to know. So that concludes the overview of the work plan. In the coming weeks, we have some events coming up today. At 6:00 p.m. on Facebook, we have a quick chat with Taylor Rogers, who's done excellent advocacy work. All of you have done excellent advocacy work. Then, of course, we have the Advocacy Summit June 18th to June 20th, 2018, and some of you will be attending that. And then we're hoping to have a post-Advocacy Summit Twitter chat so that we can recap what has happened at the Advocacy Summit. We can also share how the Advocacy Summit has influenced participants from the past. We might have a GCUS board member join that, and we're just going to have an opportunity to, in real time, engage with one another about the summit and just about the program in general. And finally, we will be sending out completion certificates and a youth advocacy toolkit at the end of June, because all of you have done so much work and you put in time watching the webinars, whether it was in real time or watching the recordings, and reading my emails, and just being committed, not just to GCUS, but to a variety of organizations. Some of you are working with other coalition members that GCUS has partnered with, and many of you are full-time students. So you've done great work, and it's important that we acknowledge that. So this concludes the webinar for today. Any questions, you can always email abrown@gce-us.org. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.